All right, chapter 34. Now Dinah, Leah's daughter, whom she bore to Jacob, went to meet the young women of the land.
She's curious.
What was that?
She's just curious. She's like, I want to see what the other girls look like. This new land.
Mm-hmm. Verse 2. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, who ruled that area, saw her, he grabbed her, forced himself on her, and sexually assaulted her. Uh-oh. Oh, my bad. I switched to the net. That's why.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
That is what happened.
No.
Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her. He took her, lay with her, and humbled her. Usually, from what I understand, unless you can prove me wrong, the word humbled her usually is not a good thing. Usually happens when somebody is sexually assaulted in scripture.
Mine says humiliated.
Mine
Yeah.
says defiled.
Yours says what, Jeff?
Defiled.
Defiled,
That's
yeah.
what I have, defiled.
Yeah.
Yeah, humbled her could mean making her feel like knowing that she has no control and she's weak.
Yep. It's not her choice. Versus if you get married, right? If you're betrothed, you get married, it's both people's choices, right? This one seems forced. Verse 3. His soul joined to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young lady and spoke kindly to the young lady.
Says damsel.
He's the narcissist. Verse 4. Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young lady as a wife." Shechem, the son of the prince of the land, saw her, okay, lay with her, he humbled her. And he started talking nice to her. Then Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young lady as a wife."
You know,
Does it sound like he's still talking about Dinah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's not married, right? So he humbles this woman, not married to her,
right?
all right? Disrespects her, humiliates her, and then he's talking nice to her. This dude's a narcissist, okay? This dude's a jerk. And now he wants to marry. That's not the right way to do things. Verse 4, Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young lady as a wife." Verse 5, now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, there it goes again, his daughter, and his sons were with his livestock in the field. Jacob held his peace until they came.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to talk with him. The sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. The men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done folly in Israel, in lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing that ought not to be done. I'm sorry, but does verse 7 sound awkward to y'all? Why does it say has done folly in Israel?
Because Israel's the family, not the land.
So Israel, the family, right, in Israel, has done folly in Jacob's house.
Right.
Okay. I just thought it was worded awkwardly as if it's like talking about the land, right?
We are in Israel.
Yeah. We're not there yet. We didn't, that's later on with the Exodus out of Egypt and then cross over to Jordan and take over, destroy the Canaanites, things like that, and establish the kingdom. That hasn't happened yet. So, all right. Verse 8, Hamor talked with them, saying, "The soul of my son, Shechem, longs for your daughter." I would call that lusts. "Please give her to him as a wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land will be before you. Live and trade in it, and get possessions in it." Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you will tell me, I will give. Ask me a great amount for a dowry, and I will give whatever you ask of me, but give me the young lady as a wife. The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father with deceit when they spoke, because he had defiled Dinah their sister, and said to them, we can't do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that is a reproach to us. Okay? Look at the words very clearly. It says, verse 13, the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father with deceit. Okay? That means what they're about to say isn't necessarily true. The verse 14, we can't do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that is a reproach to us. I would imagine that verse 13 is saying that verse 14 isn't really truthful.
Oh,
Go ahead. Milo.
I would suggest the deceit is their intention of what they're going to do. I would think it is a reproach, but because again, I can't get ahead. But because of they're saying, it sounds as though they're saying, we will allow you to marry and we'll intermarry, but first you have to circumcise and then you can get married and all will be well. But with what's going to play out in the chapter, I think the deceit is what's going to happen, not necessarily the circumcision aspect. Just a thought that I had when I read it, but I can't make sense until we get to the verses.
No, we have a disagreement here. All right. Verse 15. Only on this condition we will consent to you, if you will be as we are, that every male of you be circumcised. Then will we give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our sister, and we will be gone.
What?
Hello?
Verse 17, we will take our sister?
But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our sister and we will be gone.
But if we will not hearken to us to be circumcised, we will take our daughter and depart. Oh?
What? Probably same difference. Daughters of
Mine says daughter too.
talking.
Jacob.
This is Simon and Levi talking, right? The sons.
Yeah, these are the sons talking.
So yeah, it should be sister then.
Yeah.
Weird.
Jeff, go ahead.
But yeah, in the context of the argument, they're all talking about the father's points of views. You take my daughters, I take your daughters. They're siding with the fathers about the daughters,
Yeah.
but realistically, it's their sister, so it's also the sister. So they're both true.
Right. Verse 18. Their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man didn't wait to do this thing, but he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was honored above all the house of his father. Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city and talked with the men of their city, saying, these men are peaceful with us, therefore let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let's take their daughters to us for wives, and let's give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, if every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Won't their livestock and their possessions and all their animals be ours? Only let's give our consent to them, and they will dwell with us. All who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and Shechem and his son, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. On the third day, When they were sore, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, came upon the unexpecting city, and killed all the males.
There's your deceit.
Yes. Verse 26, they killed Hamor and Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. Jacob's sons came on the dead and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister.
See, they knew that because they've been circumcised, so they know the pain that's involved.
Yes.
So that's their deceit. They plan this like, check this out, brother. We'll get them to do this. They're gonna be in pain,
Exactly.
and we'll get them. They're gonna be weak.
Absolutely. It's wise.
Yes.
Good setup. They took their flocks, their herds, their donkeys, that which was in the city, that which was in the field, and all their wealth. They took captive all their little ones and their wives, and took as plunder everything that was in the house. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me to make me odious. What is that? To the inhabitants of the land.
To be like a stench.
All right, to be like a stench.
He says, you have made me hateful so that I should be evil to all the inhabitants of the land.
Yep. A foul odor, in another translation. To the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, I am few in number. They will gather themselves together against me and strike me, and I will be destroyed, I and my house. They said, should he deal with our sister as with a prostitute? There you go.
They ended with that.
Exactly. I mean, I agree. I agree with those brothers. I actually like what the brothers did. I think those guys deserve that. Being that they were okay with what that guy Shechem did, you know, being that they consented with it basically is like, okay, this is what we do. You know what I mean? Let's marry all your daughters. Like, nobody's saying, yo, I'm sorry my brother did this. You know, all the brothers are all in agreement, like this is okay. So yeah, y'all all going down.
Oh, and they thought they were going to take all their cattle, and that was going to be all theirs too.
Yep. Jeff.
I just like to point out the very obvious actions of these men and how it's still pre-Sinai, pre-law being given. Because, I mean, they just premeditatedly murdered people, lied to them, right? And took vengeance when vengeance is Yahuwah's.
Mm-hmm.
And, but this is all, again, pre-law. So I wonder how all this fits in to how Yahuwah sees it. I mean, if I were to look at the law like a correction later of things he doesn't want done, I would assume maybe he didn't like it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Up until this point, are there any, I don't believe there are, but are there any other commandments regarding circumcision other than Genesis 17, 12 to 14, which says, it says, I'm going to go back a little bit more. Verse 9, God said to Abraham, this is what God says, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin. It will be a token of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old, a newborn baby, shall be circumcised among you. Every male throughout your generations who is born in the house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised. My covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. The uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Is there anything else other than that that was a law regarding circumcision? Because remember, again, we discussed how Abraham had a relationship with Yahuwah for 13 years before he got circumcised as an adult. And here we're talking about newborn babies or servants being bought as well, and that they need to be circumcised. They're not necessarily talking about a timeline. They do say they need to be circumcised, but they're not necessarily given a timeline like, you know, it's got to be done the first day they come, except if they're 8 days old baby. Obviously, that's the best time to do it when they're young. But I don't know of any other commandments regarding circumcision. This is the first time, or the second time, circumcision is being brought up. And I've never really heard a conversation that this is, you know, basically the reason why I bring this up is because of Acts 15, things like Acts 15. People will bring up Acts 15 and they will say that this is what's good about the new covenant. We don't need circumcision. Circumcision's the law of Moses. We don't need the law of Moses. That's what Messiah came to do away with, and the apostles preached against it, right? So they would use a story like this to say, you see, it used to be a requirement to be circumcised if you were going to be accepted in Israel. That's what they would use, stuff like this. And we know that circumcision is not a prerequisite to be circumcised to have a relationship with Yahuwah or to be serving the God of Israel. You know, although it is a commandment, I'm not saying it's not a commandment. When we preach about this, it's not a prerequisite. Like, you're not born again after you're circumcised, right? We talk about circumcision of the heart happening first, you know, before circumcision of the flesh. But we do preach in this assembly that circumcision is definitely a command. It still is a sign. It still is connected to Abraham and the covenant. But to make it like, if somebody's not circumcised, they can't worship the God we worship. They can't hear the Torah. They can't be accepted. You know what I mean? If one of the Israelites marry a man who's not circumcised, you know, excommunicate this sister of ours with this uncircumcised person. I don't think it's like that. I think it's definitely relationship first, your allegiance to who you serve, right? Make your allegiance to serving Yahuwah. And then, yes, circumcision would definitely come at some point. Not that circumcision is the first step to make you acceptable in Israel. That's the reason why I was bringing this up. I think they're making up their own standard.
Well, if it was according to their standard, we wouldn't have this to read at all. And Abraham would have had a relationship with Yahuwah. Right. That was the standard.
Right. And 40 years in the wilderness, they weren't circumcising anybody.
Exactly.
All right. That was chapter 34. Oh, you got your hand raised? Go ahead, Milo.
Okay, I was trying to find the verses. Because there are different takes on this, whether or not it really was that she was defiled in a sense of raped or defiled and humbled because they weren't married. So I'm still on the fence with this, the fact that she went out to the daughters of the land. I don't know what her character was, but you had asked the question if the word humbled can be used with like a wife, I think. So in Deuteronomy 21, verses 10 to 14, I'm going to read, and I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit. But it says, basically it's talking to the men, like if they go into the war and the men of the war are delivered as captives to Yisrael, specifically when they see the women. If a man saw a beautiful woman in verse 11, and he has desire that she would be his wife, that what he'll wind up doing is in verse 12, bring her to his home. She has to shave her head, pare her nails, put on the raiment of her captivity, go through the bewailing. And at the end it says, and after that you shall go in unto her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. So there's a point to this. So they are considered married, these, this captive woman. In verse 14, after the lady is considered the man's wife, the Israelite's wife, it says, "It shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall let her go, wherever she will. But you will not sell her at all for money. You shall not make merchandise of her, because you have humbled her." And that humbled is the same word as defiled, which is in the Genesis chapter that we're reading. But this is now referring to a man's wife. But I guess where my question comes from, part of my confusion, whether if it's rape or not, is the aspect of she was defiled and humbled because they weren't married. Not so much that she wasn't for it, because to me it doesn't really give that necessarily. Because then I think about Exodus. There's a few other verses I want to give to. In Exodus 22, verse 16 and 17. It says, "If a man entice a maid that is not married, not betrothed, and lie with her, and he shall surely endow her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay according to the dowry of virgins." So it sounds as though it's like the reason she was considered defiled, and it could be a rape case. I'm not sure. That's where I'm on the fence. But it sounds like there could be another possibility of Shechem really did love her. Maybe they were seeing each other, whatever it was, but he did defile her because she wasn't betrothed. He humbled her. He didn't do it in the proper order of actually getting married. And now they're going to the father. And later on, Yahuwah would say, you need to marry her unless the father objects. So it's kind of, and the last point to that is the way Israel responds, because he says, what have you done? Now you made us odious in the land. And then in chapter 49 of Genesis, when Yisrael was giving the blessings to Simeon and Levi, he says to them in 49 verse 5 and 6, "Simeon and Levi are brethren, their instruments of cruelty in their habitations. O my soul, come not into their secret. Unto their assembly my honor, be not united with them. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dug down a wall." So I don't know. I guess my question is
Where was that?
in Genesis 49, 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess part of my question is it still a possibility? Because some people do contend that it wasn't that she was raped as much as she just wasn't married. And it is defiling. It is defiling because she was humbled. So
She lost her virginity.
yeah. So in that sense, she was defiled, but it wasn't something that was necessarily I don't know.
Yeah,
I kind of.
I get what you're saying. There's
Question that
validity to
one.
what you're saying. I think in a sense. All right. There's validity in what you're saying. I think if we're not mistaken, if we read Leviticus, I'm sure we'll find that anytime a husband and wife is intimate with one another, you're unclean. Like there's all types of stuff about uncleanliness, and I guess we can play on words with what it means to be defiled. But yeah, she lost her virginity. But what I don't like, and what I think we see here, there's different things. So it's not clear cut. There's verbiage being used here, and it's not clear cut. But it is disrespectful from what we understand now. Whether they understood it then or not, I'm not sure. But the fact that he did humble her, but he's recognizing her as not being his wife. I mean, it's like, known, you're not my wife. I'm not taking responsibility of you. You know what I'm saying? Immediately, versus like, what was it that we read? Rebecca and Isaac? Isaac and Rebecca? Isaac went into his mother's tent with Rebecca, and they became husband and wife there.
They did.
Right?
Order, I'm saying.
It kind of has that, like, yo, if we're gonna do this, I'm taking responsibility. This guy clearly didn't do that. We don't hear a lot from Dinah. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's kind of quiet in this situation. It's not written about her. So
I know the guy.
the brothers are upset, I would think, for a reason. But it is interesting, Milo, that Yaakov, the father, Israel, didn't have intentions on harming this guy. It almost seemed like he was agreeing with the sons, like, all right, yeah, it's a good idea. Let's circumcise, and then let's take it from there. I mean, I wonder if he was in, it kind of sound, I don't know if he was in agreement or not, or if he was just like, yo, what happened? Like, does seem like he was kind of going with the, which is interesting.
I'm gonna say it's got for the defiled in Genesis 34 verse 2, same Hebrew word H6031 as in the humbled from the Deuteronomy verse she read.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think anytime you take a virgin's virginity, I think it will kind of be considered.
No. Oh,
No?
may I clarify?
Go ahead.
Yeah. And the one in and the one in Deuteronomy, she literally is the man's wife.
Yeah.
But it still uses the word humble.
It does. So, and that's what I'm saying. I think it might be more in context because he's going to divorce her. And so, like, you've already consummated, you've already, done the do. But now she's off and now she's not married. So you humbled her in that way. But so I don't know, because this one always
I feel like
gets.
There's another example I feel like you can use when it talks about, a virgin, taking a virgin's virginity and then how to go about that. I think that would have been a good scripture to read. I wonder if they use humble for that too. I wonder if they use the same Hebrew word. All right. I think I saw Mac and Jessica's hand up.
I was just gonna ask if we could look at the Hebrew, but he already did. So
Yeah.
our Lord.
All right. Yep. It would be good to look at that word every time it's used, I guess, on occasions like this and see if it's always considered, right, like forcing themselves on, or if it could simply just mean a generic word for what happens when a virginity is taken. A virgin's virginity is taken. So far, I look at it as a disrespectful thing that Shechem did. I think it was forceful. I think it makes him sound like he's shiesty. He does something inappropriate and then he's talking nice to her, and it makes it sound like he's just
psycho
in the flesh. Just he's going after just, there's no self-control. That's the image that I get. But it is interesting that my wife read later on how it writes about these two brothers and how in their anger and the way that it was written, it made it sound like they did a bad thing. They took matters into their own hands, so forth and so on. Joshua.
I looked at the AHLB. It says it means to oppress another, causing depression. So in a negative sense.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good to me. Is that one of the definitions or the only thing you see on there?
That's the only thing that it gives.
And what is that? What kind of concordance?
The AHLB, the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon Bible.
Ancient Hebrew Lexicon Bible. Okay. Cool. What is that, an app you have or something, or a website?
You can get it on my sword.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to try to get that. Cool. Matt, Jessica?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, present a question concerning what Milo said about the verse in Deuteronomy. Could it be that the humbling wasn't necessarily that they came together, but that he was divorcing her, like he cut her off, and that was the shameful thing, and that's why it says he can't sell her or do anything because he humbled her.
What was that? Deuteronomy what?
22.
Isn't it in Torah about that? Not being able to divorce her, you have to marry her, not divorce her if there's.
But that's kind of what my point was, that it's kind of, I was trying to compare this. They're not married in Genesis, and that specific word is used to say she's defiled and humbled, and then there is a married couple that obviously both of them have already had relations, intimate relations, and that now that he is going to divorce her, it's considered humbling. And so I'm wondering if it's not so much the aspect of she's just defiled, Dinah's being defiled because of rape, but as much as this perspective with marriage. So because you're not married and you've fornicated, she's humbled, she's defiled. Or because you married her and you humbled her and now you're divorcing her and now she's not going to be married, she's defiled. So I don't know how to put it in words, but I'm trying to, because the same word is used for either one that's wasn't married and was married. So I agree with that, though. I think it is in context with the marriage covenant and them having relations together. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm probably not properly expressing that.
I understand you. I get it.
I feel like the marriage isn't the issue. I feel like it's a matter of disrespect for some. Since one is married, one is not. Marriage is not the issue regarding the word humbled, because it seems versatile. It can be used whether you're married or not. It seems more personal to me.
So how would you explain the Deuteronomy one? What would be your take on it? Sorry, let me get it.
I don't really understand this. Yeah, was it 21? She shall take off, verse 13. She shall take off the clothing of her captivity. So this person's a slave. And shall remain in your house and bewail her father and her mother a full month. After that, you shall go in to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. It shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall let her go where she desires. But you shall not sell her at all for money, for you shall not deal with her as a slave, because you have humbled her.
So now she's a wife. They're gonna get divorced.
You have humbled her. You went into her without taking responsibility as a husband to care for her.
He did, and he's gonna divorce her because he doesn't.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you stopped doing your duty as a husband because you don't like her anymore. To me, that seems like an integrity issue. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like it's not good. It says you humbled her. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. So I think what Shechem did to this girl, Dinah, was a bad thing. It wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a normal thing.
It wasn't a nice thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at the situation. I don't know how else to read this situation. Deuteronomy 21. Jeff.
In 34:3, it says that he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. It seems kind of like a disparate situation for to be loving and speaking kindly, but then to also be forcing rape on her. That doesn't seem like he loved her at all.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Milo thinks they fornicated.
I can see that. But with the example she gave of marriage and the word humbling not necessarily meaning rape, and then 34:3 that he loved her and spoke kindly to her, it kind of gives credence to it not meaning rape so much, or maybe not in every context.
All right, we're gonna end there, guys. That was Genesis 34.
See.
All right.